Welcome back to another episode of Out Loud Geek, where we discuss news and views about pop culture, science fiction, fantasy, food, cooking, the outdoors, and more. It's time, once again, for those egocentric attention holders, Harry and Meghan. Nearly 1 year ago to the day that I had released my first ever video about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, which was about how despised they and their critically rejected so-called Netflix docuseries entitled Harry and Meghan was, and still is to this day, it would appear that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are still just as despised today as they were back then. What began on March 7th, 2021, with their well-known interview with Oprah Winfrey, when they first began to talk about just how miserable their privileged lives had been in the royal family as all of their needs were being taken care of, they couldn't just leave their complaints at that. No. Instead, they decided to cash in on what they clearly believed was a money-making opportunity to be obtained by continuing to talk ad nauseum about how miserable their lives had been since moving into their mansion in Montecito, California, that they had purchased in 2020 for $14.6 million. So let me tell you about just how miserable their paltry $14.6 million mansion is that's only 86 miles away from Hollywood. The mansion has 18,000 square feet, so if you live in a 2,000 square foot home, their mansion is only 9 times larger. So that must surely be pure misery for the poor Sussexes. Oh, how dreadful. It has 9 bedrooms. Only 9? Oh, perish the thought. How utterly sad that they had to pare their lives down to only 9 bedroom choices. Oh, it's just so sad. It has 16 bathrooms. Now, surely you know that only having 16 bathrooms can't be enough for a royal couple as self-important as Harry and Meghan are. That's just beyond reasonable. It's terrible. But beyond these clearly inadequate features that are just too provincial for words, their plush Montecito mansion also has rose gardens, century-old olive trees, a tennis court, a tea house, you know, for all of the Japanese guests that they may have, a children's cottage, you know, for those times that they really need some quiet time away from young children, because 9 bedrooms simply isn't enough inside for that. A swimming pool. Wait, you mean only 1 swimming pool? This is just so impoverished. Oh, it's awful. And a separate 2-bed guest house for just in case anyone actually wants to stay with them for a night or two. Only 2 beds. Oh, that's just really sad and pathetic. How beneath their royalness. Oh, it's just awful. I truly cannot imagine the sheer misery of having to own such a failure of a mansion. Oh, it's just awful. Let us take a moment to reflect on the larger, more palatial royal homes that they can no longer visit or live in to understand their tortured lives. Or maybe not. So after the Oprah interview, to cash in, Harry and Meghan produced that awful Netflix docuseries aptly named Harry and Meghan that aired in 2022, in which they mostly rehashed what they had told Oprah in 2021, but shared a little bit more of the horrors that they suffered at the hands of the royal family. Oh, just horrible. Then, after that, Prince Harry released his tell-all memoir entitled Spare earlier this year, which did sell a lot of copies, so they did make money from that. But not everything has gone well for Harry and Meghan, especially for their charity that they named Archewell after their son Prince Archie. Now, I must admit that when I first heard the name Archewell, it reminded me of a British confection known as a Bakewell tart, which I'm familiar with after having watched episodes of The Great British Baking Show that did include the show's contestants making the confection. But in 2021, which was when Harry and Meghan did the Oprah Winfrey interview, but long before they released their awful Netflix docuseries in 2022, the Archewell charity had earned $13 million in contributions, which is not a bad figure. But when 2022 came along, and Harry and Meghan's popularity began to dip thanks in part to that truly awful Netflix docuseries, Plus, from what I saw, they weren't really doing all that much to promote the charity or its causes because they were simply too preoccupied with promoting themselves and their own self-importance. The Archewell charity didn't get as many contributions that year. In fact, several news outlets recently reported that the amount of contributions that their Archewell charity did take in 2022 was only $2 million. And that's a truly massive drop of $11 million, which means that Archewell's contributions declined by 85% in 1 year alone. That's inconceivably bad for a charity, but not really all that surprising to me given that Harry and Meghan's only focus has been on how miserable their privileged lives have been since quitting the royal family in 2020 and moving into their $14.6 million Montecito mansion. Further, while they were clearly focused on producing their nonsensical and egocentric docuseries for Netflix in 2022, they allowed their Archewell charity that they claim is so important to them to essentially languish. And that's what happened. Archewell was in the red by $674,000 in 2022, and part of that was the $150,000 increase in salary for the man they hired to run it, James Holt. Lori Styron, who is the executive director of the independent charity watchdog group Charity Watch, says celebrity passion project organizations like the Archewell Foundation often receive most of their support from a few individuals, such as its founders or one family. She said, quote, "We can deduce from this reporting that the majority of the charity's donations in 2021 came into the organization in the form of small donations from the general public, whereas nearly 100% of the donations in 2022 came from only 2 donors," unquote. In other words, once people stopped caring about Harry and Meghan, they also stopped caring about their passion project charity. But the bad news for Harry and Meghan doesn't end with their failing Archewell Foundation charity. Last week, The Hollywood Reporter released its annual list of Hollywood's biggest winners and losers for 2023. And guess who made it onto the list? Harry and Meghan. But which way did the prestigious Hollywood Reporter classify Prince Harry and Meghan Markle? As losers. That's right, folks. Harry and Meghan are viewed by Hollywood as 2 of this year's biggest losers. And we'll read what the Hollywood Reporter wrote about the Sussexes. In 2020, the royal duo fled a life of ceremonial public service to cash in their celebrity status in the States. But after a whiny Netflix documentary, and I am so thrilled that the Hollywood Reporter described it like that because it's true. A whiny biography, spare, even the title is a pouty gripe. So true, so absolutely true. And an inert podcast, so even the Hollywood Reporter is acknowledging just how lifeless and pointless Meghan Markle's Spotify podcast was. The Harry and Meghan brand swelled into a sanctimonious bubble just begging to be popped. You mean kind of like a big pimple. And South Park was the pin. The show's 20-minute worldwide privacy tour takedown in March was savage. And it was also absolutely brilliant, as I had talked about in a video that I had released back in February. And that was followed by Spotify dropping archetypes, with a top executive labeling the duo as grifters. So true, so true. Still, all the scorn and mockery beats otherwise having to attend 200 plus official royal family engagements a year, which just sounds hellish. Oh yes, how hellish was that? I knew that it was going to be pretty much impossible for me to read that without laughing my ass off several times. It's just too funny. Now, I really have to hand it to the Hollywood Reporter. They did not hold anything back with their criticisms of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, and they did it sarcastically too, which I totally love. When I released my first video about Harry and Meghan back on December 15th, 2022, I said multiple times that that awful so-called self-serving Netflix docuseries that they produced would only harm their public image more than help it, and that's exactly what happened. In the video that I had released a year ago, I talked about how their PR team clearly had no idea what it was doing, and that's probably just as true now as it was back then. The only way that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle could possibly turn their negative public image around would be to completely transform themselves into something that people might actually care about by putting more effort into their charity and making it appear that they actually care more about others than they do about themselves. But I honestly don't think that they are capable of doing that. Thanks for watching today, and a huge thanks to everyone who has subscribed to our channel. We appreciate your support. If you enjoyed this video, please press the like button, and please feel free to share a comment. If you'd like to help support this channel, please press the red subscribe button, and please press the bell to receive notifications for new content. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and Twitter by clicking on the links in the description. Until next time, this is Out Loud Geek.